Today's episode of the Riderflex podcast is sponsored by our friends at Colorado Startups. Their mission is to connect startups with needed capital and talent to build industry-changing companies in Colorado. They are the largest online community of founders in the state and a great resource for local entrepreneurs building a big company. On today's episode of the Riderflex podcast, we have guest Julian Flannery. He's the co-founder and CEO of Summus. Summus is a leading virtual specialist platform. They bring personalized expert advice to every medical decision. Julian Flannery on the Riderflex podcast. How you doing, Julian?
I'm doing well, Steve. Thanks for having me.
It's an honor, my friend. I looked up your background. I'm like, oh, this guy went to Duke and then he went to Harvard. Like, I better sharpen up my game. I better be ready for Julian.
Resumes are overrated, man.
No, I looked up when I was studying. I was like, oh man, I wonder if he was at Duke when they won a national championship. But it looks like you missed like you weren't there when they actually won one. You were like, you came in right after, and then they won one.
That's exactly right. I mean, basketball was very good at that time. We never won the national championship. Ironically, our football team was actually quite good. I think we went to the Hall of Fame Bowl when I was there. But Duke football is not, it's not Alabama. So,
what did you see Coach K in the hallway? Were you like, hey, what's up, man? Were you like any of that?
Well, I'll tell you a story. I played a sport there, and we ended up we were going to the quarterfinals, NCAA quarterfinals, and I remember Coach K came in and gave us a speech before that game, and man, he's an excellent motivator. He speaks very plainly in quotes. And cool. He's an excellent coach. So I had that nice experience.
Awesome. I bet you got to go to the games, right? Were you one of those students leaning over the bench, like doing those chants? Were you one of those?
I never was. You had to sleep in whatever Coach K-ville in the tent. Occasionally I got lucky with some friends who had some tickets, but Cameron Crazies I couldn't get in there. I couldn't handle
it. A buddy of mine that I know quite well is on the advisory board for Riderflex. He went to Duke. He owns a company called X-Chair. We're just great friends. I used to work with him. And he's a basketball fanatic. And he showed me this picture of when he was in school. And the students are, literally like the bench behind the players. You're almost touching the players, leaning over them, chanting. I was like, wow, okay. As a player, I thought that would be crazy listening to those students in my ear for 2.5 hours, but
I agree. Well, Cameron's, it's like a high school gym. And so you got this great acoustic thing that happens and you've got, a really fanatic fan base, and it's a tough place to play if you're coming in visiting.
I bet.
Yeah.
So tell the listeners a little about yourself personally. We're already touching on Duke, but how about even earlier, some family stuff, where you grew up, things like that? Go for it.
Yeah, no, I'm what I call a NAFTA child, or a North American child. I was born in Canada, spent 2 years there. My mother's side of the family was Canadian. They taught at McGill in medicine. So I have a family, a lot of my family was actually, I come from a family of doctors. So I deeply understand medicine, which I know we'll talk about. And then I moved to Mexico City when I was 5, and so I lived there for 6 years and had an opportunity to kind of grow up in Mexico City, speak a little bit of Spanish, and got a great experience, cultural experience growing up. And then I came back to the States for middle school and high school, and ultimately didn't trip over myself, so I ended up going to Duke down in North Carolina. So I've seen a lot of the country. My professional background, which we'll get into, I'm sure, I've been to all 50 states in this country, so I have a deep understanding.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. So I understand this country very well.
It sounds like you understand North America pretty well, right? Like, wow. From Canada to Mexico to all 50 states. That's pretty cool. Not a lot of people can say that. Do you speak a little French and a little Spanish?
I can speak a touch of French, I can understand a touch of French, but I was the full-fledged English-speaking Canadian. So,
okay. Okay. Well, were both parents doctors, or what was the situation with your mom and dad?
Actually, my mother and father were not doctors. doctors. My grandfather was, my aunt was, and my uncle was. So my father was a chemical engineer. My mother was an English teacher.
Okay.
So we kind of had we had that experience. But my grandfather was very influential in my home, and so he was a great doctor, and my uncle has since become a kind of world-class surgeon, and he's tremendous as well. And so it's I definitely have experience, exposure to it, if you will.
So you went to high school where?
Outside in upstate New York, outside of Rochester, New York. I went to high school in a little town called Pittsford, New York, which is actually very interesting. Home of Wegmans, Paychex. Some of the most successful companies over the last 20 years were kind of born in that little segment of the country.
How about that? Okay, so why Duke? How did you choose Duke?
I'll tell you, I had a couple different opportunities. So I played a sport in college.
What'd you play?
So I played lacrosse in college.
Sweet, awesome.
Yeah, and I ended up, I was in upstate New York, and so it's very cold. And so I was thinking about, I was looking at these great programs, great academics, great cultures, all that kind of thing. But I was like, I never want to hold a stick where my hands are frozen anymore. So if I'm going to play this sport in college, I might as well go south.
Right? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's the little decisions. It's the little things that make you make decisions,
Did you go to Duke on scholarship for lacrosse?
Yeah, I did. It was a partial scholarship.
Hey, that's even partial. That's a big deal. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get the full scholarship in the non-revenue generating sports, so.
But still, they have a pretty good lacrosse. Did you guys, what was the best you did? I mean, first of all, were you a 4-year starter? And what was the best year the team had while you were there?
Okay, well, the first question is a good one. I started my sophomore year. I got injured, and it was a non-lacrosse injury, and so I ended up not playing as much my junior and senior year. So really kind of went through a humbling experience there, which was overall very healthy.
Okay.
And
were you super? Why were you super cocky before that? Were you super?
No, I wasn't cocky. I just think you go through adversity, and you learn some stuff. Right. It's not pleasant to go through, but you learn some stuff.
Yes, for sure.
But we were. Steve, we were top 10 ranked all 4 years. We went to one Final Four, one Final Eight, both times losing to Princeton. So,
all right, great experience. Yeah. Great experience, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're doing this, did you know for sure what you wanted to do? Did you have your career all mapped out? What did you know you were going to go to Harvard for your MBA? Talk to me a little bit about that as you're going through Duke.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, I think it's rare that a college student knows what they want to do, right? You have inklings, you're driven by, some things, you're figuring out who you are. And so, I thought I wanted certain things. I thought I wanted to get into finance. I ended up going into, I had a couple offers. But as sort of happens in life, kind of serendipity comes in, and I had an opportunity to go work for a presidential candidate who, was, I wasn't really ideologically driven, but it was an opportunity to make no money and travel around the country and get exposure to, public policy and Washington and all that stuff. So I went ahead and did.
How did that happen? Did somebody in your family know somebody and they're like, hey, my kid wants to volunteer?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, with that, you obviously have to be a credible person. You have to have a good academic record. But I knew somebody who knew the family, and they just took a liking to me and said, hey, this guy's running for president.
Cool.
So hey, just come on board, and you'll be sort of the little junior staffer person. And that was my first job out of college.
I love that. And by the way, it doesn't matter like left, right, Republican, Democrat. Just the fact that you got to do that experience.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's. Okay, can you give me something like really cool? Did you get to go into like the Oval Office and like here, give me something good.
Well, I'll tell you, I later worked in the White House where I did get to go to the Oval Office, and I had a desk about, I would say about 20 feet away from the Oval Office for a year and a half. So that was pretty neat. Yep.
Watching, you're watching like super important people walk by all the time.
Oh yeah, I was not one of them, but I was watching super important people walk by.
Would you go to happy hour with your friends afterwards and you're like, wow, like, guess who I saw today? Like, wow, that's pretty cool.
It's heady. It's really interesting. Well, it was fascinating, right? Because I was there right around 9/11, and so that was when Tom Ridge was appointed Homeland Security Secretary, and I got to know Governor Ridge really well. He's an amazing guy.
Wow.
He's a former governor from Pennsylvania, and just a really really awesome guy.
Okay.
I did a lot of Homeland Security stuff and whatnot, but it was neat. Yeah, it was neat.
Now, this is before business school at Harvard, right?
That's right. Yeah, that was
Okay.
before
Okay.
business school. Yeah.
So are you there thinking you want to go into politics at this point, or where? Yeah. How was you?
Yeah.
Career. What were you doing there? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, I had a really good experience. Back to the first job, you're spending time. One day you're on a farm field in Iowa talking to
That's so
people
cool.
who are like a pig farmer, and then the next day you're kind of in New York and you're talking to people who are financing the campaign and all that stuff. So you got a real cross section understanding of the country.
Cool.
But then when I went to I got an opportunity to go to the White House. It was a super opportunity. I'm very grateful for it. Saw a lot of stuff, experienced a lot of stup. Again, 9/11 was an interesting time. It was, we went from a domestic focused kind of education priority, opening up relations with South America to a kind of, quote unquote wartime presidency, right? Post 9/11. So it was really, really interesting.
Wow.
But I think, I have a view, if you look at the most successful people in government, it's not people who stay there for a long period of time. You actually have to get out of government and go do something, productive. Not that government's not productive, but you got to do something in business or in law or whatever, so that you can, if you ever have ambition to go back, you have a sharper knife. You have a skill set, you have an understanding of whatever it is you're doing, and you're just more attractive. Otherwise, you're just kind of a cog in the wheel of government. And so, I always wanted to go back into business. I think a natural transition point was, hey, I'll go, try to get my MBA and apply to a couple different schools, and was lucky enough to get into to Harvard and spend 2 years there. And that was kind of my transition into the business world.
Congratulations, by the way, getting into Harvard. I mean, and Duke. I mean, you played lacrosse at Duke. You got into Harvard Business School, and by the way, you got to travel around in the White House a little bit and meet people. I mean, okay, early on, you're having some good success, my friend. Congrats on all of that.
It was the best job I had was when I was 26 years old. I mean, for God's sakes.
Okay, well, and then after Harvard, Morgan Stanley. Let me guess, Morgan Stanley recruited you out of business school. How'd that happen?
Yeah, I still had this hankering. Do I want to go into finance? And I still hadn't sort of, scratched that itch. And so I was looking at different opportunities, and, had a good opportunity at Morgan Stanley, and was there for 5 years, and, did everything from investing in companies to advising companies to, doing some things on the management committee, not me, but sort of staffing them.
Okay.
And then from there, I kind of, made a transition as well.
Now, is that where you started investing in companies, doing valuations and all these? Is that where you're like, okay, I like this. I like the startup. I like the small company. I like the investing. I'm attracted to that. Is that how that started?
It's a really interesting question, Steve. I think everybody, when they go through their career, they're going to try things out, right? And some things are going to feel better than other things. And what I realized through my chapter at Morgan Stanley, incredibly valuable chapter for me. You learn about, how to, look at financial statements. You learn how to value companies. You learn about capital raising structures. You learn about industries, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But ultimately, what was more satisfying to me, and what I knew was sort of in my DNA, was I'm much more of a lead build person than an advise and kind of invest, right? Okay. And so I always found myself on the other side of the table of the entrepreneurs or the CEOs who are coming to us for capital and saying, I actually want to be on the other side of the table.
I see. Okay. Got it. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. Now, so this is happening. You're getting this great experience. What, and then Gerson, I think that's how you say it. They recruited you from Morgan. Is that what happened?
Yeah. You can call it GLG.
Okay.
GLG, Gerson Lerman Group. Here's what happened. So I was at Morgan Stanley, and I was 30 years old, and I said, geez, I think I want to go in a different direction career-wise. In other words, I want to lead build. I want to be responsible for, running and leading teams or building operations versus kind of financing them. And I looked around at different opportunities, and GLG was fortunate enough, I was fortunate enough to bump into them. Really innovative model, and I had no leadership on my resume outside of what I knew in my heart and in my gut. They said, okay, we'll give you a chance to run a small team, I went over to GLG and ultimately ended up running a small team that ultimately ended up being a kind of the tip of the spear for our product strategy. That was tremendous. And so within 2 years, I was promoted to the management team
I saw that.
and had a much sort of larger mandate, which I loved. I loved my chapter there. So
Good move. That's great
yeah.
experience right there. Okay. All right. So, but now the hey, I want to do my own thing entrepreneurial bug is
Yeah.
what? Is it like bubbling up down in there in your gut a little bit? You're like, I'm looking for an opportunity to step out and
Yeah.
do my own thing, or did it just come to you accidentally, or were you looking for it?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
I'd written, in journals, all the way back to, I would say 2003,
Okay.
that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, wanted to start my own thing. It was just kind of what was the right time.
Okay.
But then, your question is a really good one, right? Because what ultimately ends up happening in entrepreneurship, you're either always an entrepreneur and you're always thinking up new ideas, or an idea just kind of comes and kind of bumps into you. And you're kind of like, huh, that's interesting. And you do some work around it. And ultimately what I did is I said, great. I spent, I was, let's see, I had just had my my second child.
Okay.
So I did about 3 months of research, had a conversation with my wife, and I said, well, let's do this. And so
how did it come to you? How did this happen? So now this is a perfect segue. Let's walk into Summus now, and tell me how that happened, where the idea came from, some of the early conversations. Talk to me.
Yeah. So, my co-founder in this business, non-executive, but on my board, Aftab Karani, and he and I were old friends from Duke. Very smart guy, was a surgeon before he went to McKinsey. Now he's a life sciences investor. And we were sitting down having coffee one day, and he said, well, what if we did GLG for healthcare? And I said, wow. And the light sort of went off. And I was like, interesting, because ultimately what GLG is a marketplace for expertise, right? We had 500,000 people around the world. We had technology and service in the middle. And then we had customers who wanted access to expertise. And
okay.
We took that model and said, would that apply in healthcare? So Aftab and I sort of, again, I spent about 2-3 months kind of working on it and thinking about the market, and did we have a product that, that fit in the market, and where was the market going? And ultimately we decided to do it.
And so you're at GLG while you guys are forming this and doing your homework on it. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I was 100% committed to GLG, but, ultimately what happens in these things is you start thinking about an idea in your off hours, you're spending time, looking at the market. And then, I wasn't a 25-year-old kid. I was in my mid, kind of on the other half of 35. And so, I was thinking about, do I want to do this? I've got this family. Am I okay doing this? And then also kind of, what is the business proposition? Does it fit with what I want to do personally, and all that kind of thing?
And you had one co-founder, your friend, the guy that you used to party with at Duke, which I think is interesting. So all right. At some point you guys say, all right, we're all in, we're going to do this. We're going to form it. Is Summus today what it was when you first started, or have you pivoted a couple of times?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Look, as an entrepreneur, you always have to be willing to pivot, and you have to be willing to pivot quickly. I think, what Summus is we built a platform that really is informing medical decision making through access to leading providers. And so when you build it's a marketplace concept. When you build kind of a two-sided marketplace in that way, you have to be thoughtful around the value propositions for the doctors, and also for the consumers or the patients in this case. So I would say it's evolved pretty dramatically in great ways. We started with this concept of, hey, we're going to deploy really great doctors across serious health concerns. Okay. But then what ended up happening is, as an entrepreneur, you just bump into things that you learn about. You're constantly learning, right? And so you have to be open to that. And so, The story goes, Aftap's wife was an ER trained doctor, really, really a tremendous doctor who was practicing at, used to practice at New York Presbyterian. She was the chief of, the chief resident of emergency medicine at New York Presbyterian, New York's #1 hospital. And what we found out was that our customers were loving the interactions with her. And then if needed, we would escalate to an expert, right? And so what we learned there is like, wow, it's not just about the expert specialists. It's actually about, the ER doctor is helping people prioritize health issues, understand healthcare, giving them peace of mind. And today we actually have, if you look at our utilization profile inside of our customers, about 70% of our engagements are that interaction versus purely the experts. And so you're constantly evolving in that direction. I'll give you one more. About 1.5 years ago, I looked at the market and said, well, wow, we've built this really great technology platform, kind of a SaaS platform. And why can't we do this for hospitals? And so, we repurposed the SaaS platform to power new patient acquisition inside of hospital systems. And, we recently launched with Hospital for Special Surgery here in New York, top, #1 orthopedic hospital in the country. And that's been tremendous. So now our customers not only are employers and families around the world, but also hospital systems. So it's a pretty neat evolution.
So when you're talking to an investor, do you say, hey, we're a tech company, we're a SaaS company, or we're a hospitality and healthcare company? How do you describe yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for anybody who's listening, who knows sort of, telemedicine, virtual care, so it started with telemedicine, and now, there's this big virtual care category where there's lots of companies like ours who are, technically technology companies, but also marry that with kind of a service component. There's services is the category from an investor perspective. Yeah, technology-driven services.
Okay, I like that. So right now, the product, if you were going to give the elevator pitch as it stands today, somebody's never heard of Summus, give me the layman's term 2-minute review. Go for it.
Yeah. So Summus is a technology-enabled platform that enables our members to connect with leading doctors across all health questions. Ultimately, what we're doing at Summus is helping inform medical decision-making through fast access to leading doctors across the U.S. healthcare system. And today we have a network across 48 U.S. hospitals, including some of the best doctors in the world that consult to our platform and help our members make good decisions. And the way we help people is really across the continuum of health questions. So we get members calling us on complex allergies for their kids, on weight management issues, chronic issues, preventive health issues, all the way up to ALS and cancer. And really our value prop is quickly connecting them with a leading provider who, through a combination of clinical judgment and our technology, is matched to their particular diagnosis. So they're going to have a really informed discussion about what they need to do in healthcare, what their treatment options, what are the cutting edge clinical trials or whatnot. And ultimately what you're doing is helping people feel more powerful in their healthcare journey. That's what we do.
Okay. I'm gonna put myself in this situation and pretend like I'm a customer real quick. And
sure.
Walk me through this. So I go to my family doctor here in this little town I live in Colorado. Yeah. And, he's the guy that like, okay, you have the flu, like, go home and tough it out. He's that doctor.
Yeah.
I have this back pain that I was going through last year. I'm like, listen, this pain in my back is not going away. Like something's wrong. Yeah. I kept telling him something's up. I know something's wrong. So he eventually says, okay, well, here's a couple of back doctor specialists that I know. You can call either one and set up an appointment.
Yep.
So then I have to go see them. And then I talked to one guy and he's like, yeah, this, that. And I talked to the other guy and I'm trying to decide who to use. And one of them's telling me to get a, MRI and blah, blah, blah. Where would Summus, where would you come into play right there? Is it right after I talk to my family doctor? And then, walk me through that.
Yeah. So we could come in 2 spots right after your family doctor. You, let's say you were at an employer that had Summus as a benefit. You could call us up and say, hey, I've been struggling with this back pain. I haven't been diagnosed yet, but here's kind of what's what I'm feeling. We would connect you with our Summus MD, and
Okay.
you might even have you connected with a back specialist. Really informational, helping you understand maybe what it might be. Understanding your symptoms, not necessarily diagnosing you, because you can't do that in a virtual environment, but
Okay.
helping you understand your treatment options. And then from there, Summus would work. Again, we have technology on top of the healthcare system. We would help you find doctors, maybe in addition to the ones that your primary care doctor recommended, that would meet our bar for quality, and be able to see you. And then we guide you on sort of what the preparation is for that. Now, the other piece we could come in, let's say you saw those doctors and you're struggling. Okay, this guy's telling me this,
Right.
this person's telling me that.
Which happened. That happened.
I don't
Yep.
know what to do.
Yep.
And you'd go through the same process. We'd have a little bit more of an informed discussion with the back specialist. That person could be at HSS. They could be at a leading, orthopedic hospital or spine center on the West Coast. Doesn't really matter. And you'd be connected with them. We would have your imaging, we would have your, your medical history, and you would have a 45-minute conversation with them, trying to understand, are there surgical options? Are there non-surgical options? What are the kind of the best in class, treatment paths that I can access?
Mm-hmm.
And so ultimately the value for you is informing you as a healthcare consumer through access to the very best expertise.
Okay.
Helping you not wander around the healthcare system. Let's say you're at an employer, like you don't know, you might do a bunch of tests everywhere. You might see 5 different doctors, and also helping you avoid treatment paths that are, potentially not ideal for you. Do you want to get, maybe you're getting a recommendation of surgery. Maybe the back specialist we connect you with says, gosh, most people with that type of condition don't get surgery, about 60%. And then you have a better, more informed way to kind of, make a decision on your care.
So you're educating me, you're assisting me through the process, you're introducing me to more doctors so I have more options, and in a lot of cases probably better doctors because they're in Minnesota and I don't live in Minnesota, and the best doctor for this thing lives there.
That's exactly right.
Okay, you're doing that. That all sounds wonderful. When I hear you say that, I'm also thinking, does this cost me a lot more? Like, what does this do to me? Like, does my insurance pay for this, or what happens to me now with the bills hitting in the mailbox? Talk to me about that part.
So that whole process is no cost to you. We provide it to an employer, so it's an employer sponsored benefit. Think of Summus that sits on top of your health plan. So if you're a CEO of a 5,000 person company, ultimately the value to the employer is helping their employees make better medical decisions inside their plan, which is A, good for their employee base, but also B, drives cost savings for their plan, right? This really applies to me. I would have used that. I had one guy's like, oh, it's just arthritis. I can see it right here on the CAT scan, blah, blah, blah. And the other guy's like, no, I actually think it's an annular tear, which I didn't know what that was until then. Yeah.
And so they're kind of arguing back and forth. And there was a moment where I'm like, hell, I don't know. Just give me some more pain pills for now. I don't know what to do next. And so, I could have definitely used the service. Right. And you're telling me too, that I can get my phone and I'm talking to a specialist in another state, and I'm actually talking to the doctor on the screen on my phone. Is that accurate?
Correct. That's right. Yep.
Wow.
And we would do all the work, all the records collection, all the scheduling, a very white glove product for you. And our typical expert consultation is about 45 minutes. So again, we change the marketplace for expertise. Whereas if you go see your specialist, they might come in to see you for 15, 20 minutes, half of which might be their resident. You get quality time with this doctor, really kind of walking through it, helping, just deeply, probing the questions. You and your wife, or you and your family can do it together. We can support multi-party video from anywhere in the world.
Is your ultimate goal for the hiring manager at ABC company to be looking at a candidate they really want to recruit, and they go, hey, listen, by the way, on top of our awesome healthcare plan, we also have Summus here. And then the candidate's like, yeah, that's it, right? That's the magic for you right there.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. And it's we're seeing that with some clients. It's one of the most popular benefits that they have.
So, I could see, I totally can see that. Walk me through the business model for you. So how do you guys, so the company pays per employee that signs up? What's your model? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, it's we price it to drive a return on investment for the employer, right?
Okay.
And return on investment is a function of the quality of the providers and expertise that we're deploying for
Right.
the employees, and then the utilization across the population, right? And so we're typically going to price it on a per employee per month basis,
Okay.
PPM or PMPM. And then we're going to justify that with a certain utilization, which is driven by our business model. And then our costs on the other side are really, doctor costs and just the cost of the technology platform and the service architecture.
Okay. How big's the company now? Can you talk about any of that? I know it's a private company. I don't know how much you want to share. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm looking at LinkedIn. It says 13 employees. I have no idea if that's accurate. Talk to me.
Yeah, it's a little low. We gotta update that. But we also actually have, we have about 30 Summus MDs who work with us as exclusively as independent contractors, and then we have a network of about 4,000 doctors. So the beauty of this, if you think about, when Uber was first around, I think it was like $1 billion valued company at 8 employees, right? If you put technology in the middle of big networks, you can do pretty awesome scale
Mm.
scale things without having a ton of employees.
Bingo. Yeah. Bingo.
So
Yeah. For sure.
we've got a great core team. We're in the process of scaling our sales team. We hired a great sales leader and a handful of
Great.
sort of enterprise level sales folks that are out there, engaging the market. We think we have a really unique product in the market, something that's different than other providers and other vendors, and really driving great impact.
How do you, what's in it for the doctor? Does the doctor sign up because they're going to get additional business they wouldn't have gotten? Is that the relationship?
Yeah, that's right. And we also pay for their time. So you kind of change the marketplace for expertise, right? So the traditional healthcare system, they get reimbursed, right? So this is an important point, Steve. Like, going back to my family, right? If you're a world-class physician or you're practicing at a leading academic hospital, the way that the healthcare system values the piece of the care continuum, which is I'm giving you my viewpoints, my expertise, it's actually really low, right? So the way the healthcare system is right now is either health systems or doctors get paid the most for actually doing stuff to you, surgery or treatments or whatnot.
I
And
see.
so
Yep.
we changed the value of the concept of, hey, you've spent 20 or 30 years, training to be the best at what you do. We want you to spend 45 minutes with Steve and help him understand what the heck he needs to do. And that's, so that's the value prop for them. Both, we value their time appropriately, and then you might end up being a patient of theirs if you have a good interaction.
My favorite doctors are always the ones that spend time talking to me. Just
There
talk
you
to me.
go.
Just can
There
you just
you
be can you just be human for a minute and like have a conversation with me? I mean,
exactly.
I swear, last time I shit you not, last time I went in to get injections in my back for
Yeah.
arthritis. I mean, the guy does an okay job on the injections, but I'm like, okay, are you a robot, or are you gonna are we gonna have like at least a 5-minute conversation here, or are you just gonna
Yeah.
inject me and move to the next person? So
Yeah.
I love the fact that you're creating this environment
Yeah.
where you're like you said, an average time spent with the patient is 45 minutes. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's ever happened to me. I don't know if any doctor has ever spent 45 minutes talking to me ever. And so,
You're exactly right, and that's just the way the healthcare system's set up, and that's the beauty of our business model is
wow,
you just
wow,
change the incentives for
wow.
people, and you create we really have this core belief at Summus that if you improve the provider experience, you get a better customer experience, and I think
love it.
the healthcare system kind of has it backward that way.
I love it. Okay, I love everything you're saying here. Okay, let me ask you this. Let's go backwards just for a tad. Did you bootstrap this thing? You and your co-partner, like, okay, you were making good money at the time, with your company. He's making good money, so you guys are doing fine for your families and professionally. Did you just throw in some personal money here, your seed money for yourselves?
Yeah.
How'd you do that from a cash perspective?
Yeah, no, I think good entrepreneurs, unless you have zero cash, you want to show that you've got some skin in the game. So I did put some personal money into it.
Yeah.
I should say my wife and I put personal money into it. She's part of that team.
All right. Yeah.
And we did raise from great investors. So you have to be very careful as an entrepreneur who you raise capital from,
Yes.
and what the terms are, and you have to have an understanding of that. So we raised seed capital, and we just finished a recent fundraise. We haven't overcapitalized the business, but we have outstanding investors who kind of understand the space, believe in us, and have a lot of leverage in the market. So it's great.
Congratulations.
Thank
Was
you.
that challenging, asking somebody to write a check? How'd that feel the first time when you're like, hey, listen, this is how much we need. Can you just like write me a check real quick?
It's so funny. This is why I never understood the Silicon Valley myth of the founder. You know what I mean? But once you do it, you're like, oh, okay, I get it, right? Because it's really hard. It's really hard to build a company from a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
And B, you actually have to be able to be really skilled at telling a story that talks about a value proposition to an investor, but ultimately you have to ask them for money, right?
That's right.
And so yeah, that was challenging, but I think as most entrepreneurs, once you find a good investor who's really excited, then you kind of leverage that and you raise more money or find more investors, and that's kind of how it goes.
Now you've been doing this for about what, 5 years? Like when you guys really first started? Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
What was the scariest moment for you when your wife's looking at you like, can you just call Morgan Stanley back and see if you can get your job back?
I think, any first-time entrepreneurs generally, you always want to watch your cash balance, and so you have to be really thoughtful around revenue generation. So, the scariest thing for me was when we got into the employer market. What I didn't know at the time was that it operated on an annual cycle. So in other words, if you're a company, you're buying a benefit on an annual cycle. So I have to have a cash balance that takes me through 18 months before I can actually be confident about having $1 of revenue. So, that I think is the scariest piece. And I think, ultimately though, as an entrepreneur, there's going to be a lot of fear, but you have to be able to overcome that. And you have to be able to just kind of, adapt to the daily ups and downs and just, if you have cash, you are okay. And your goal should be to get to break even. So
are you guys there? Are you burning cash right now as you scale up? Or are you actually?
We are slightly unprofitable, but we raised money when we were profitable, and we have a plan to get to break even, and we are not overcapitalizing the company. We think we can drive a great, we can drive a great opportunity with, by not taking $20 or $30 million.
Okay. Now, okay, great. And by the way, let's just pause there for the listeners, for the aspiring entrepreneurs. So what Julian just said was, hey, listen, we had a little seed cash early on. We took some small investments. Then we got the business going. We got some revenue going. We got some traction. We actually got to break even. Then we went to some investors and said, we want to scale the shit out of this thing now. We're ready to really grow it. We've already proven that we can start a business and break even. Now give us some cash. And the only reason you're burning it now is because you're pouring it into sales and marketing and probably some additional tech stuff, I'm assuming.
That's right.
Is that accurate?
You nailed it. And I think a lot of people read about the kind of, the venture funded, companies and whatnot. And that's a different model, right? I mean, if you have a story that is very aggressive and very big, you can overcapitalize it, but it becomes, if you don't hit, you're going to be in trouble. So,
and by the way, the translation of overcapitalized means you're not in charge anymore because you had to give up too much equity.
You nailed it.
Most of the time.
And actually, Steve, you know this, right? As a business person, overcapitalizing makes you kind of lazy with your cash. You're just fat, You're not as sharp about the decisions you're making. You're throwing cash around, and
no doubt about it. I'll give you a perfect example. We bootstrapped Riderflex as a recruiting firm, right? We're about $1 million firm right now in revenue, but Scott and I bootstrapped it right from the beginning. We've never taken on cash.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Well, thank you. But then when the pandemic hit, we filed for our PPP loan like every other small business in the country. Mm-hmm. And we got this cash in, right? Fascinating how my behavior changed. I'm like, oh, we just got like $50K in to help with payroll. So, okay, well, and you just, all of a sudden I got a little looser, just a little bit looser about some decisions. And I was like, oh, this is exactly how it happens when you take on cash from investors. You're not watching it, and so, Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Okay. Well, was there ever a night, did you have a couple of like 3 a.m. wake up, walk around in your living room kind of because you woke up in a sweat? Did you have a few of those?
I still have them, man. Come on.
So
I
awesome.
woke up at 3 a.m. this morning. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's so true. What about competition? I mean, how do you protect yourself from, because one of the things I thought about, and I don't want you to like name competition, but one of the things I thought about when I was preparing for the interview is, well, I was like, well, isn't United Healthcare just like going to build one of these on their own or something? I don't, talk to me about that.
Yeah. Well, I think if the fundamentals of what we're building at Summus is built on what I think is an asymmetry in the market. So,
Okay.
right now you have a lot of bloat, you have a lot of bureaucracy with the carriers, United Healthcare, with the hospital systems, and it's a really inefficient place. So,
Okay.
I think our moat, and I think what you're talking about is a moat, which is, a unique product market fit where it's defensible, right? And so, we think we have a good one around the experience that I personally have in building a marketplace for expertise, right? And the experience you provide for doctors, the experience you provide for customers. And that's not easily replicable. You can't just,
Right.
United Healthcare can't go out and just do that. It can be really clunky, right? So we're not just a telehealth, a virtual care platform. They're fundamentals to our business model that I think are very different than what's out there in the market and defensible.
Love that. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
I was wondering about
Yeah.
that. All right. Couple of questions here as we move into wrap up. Knowing that there's entrepreneurs and business owners, startup founders listening to this podcast, what would you say to the two guys that just graduated from North Carolina? I'll say North Carolina since that's the rival of Duke. They just graduated North Carolina. They just graduated North Carolina, and they're like, "Hey, let's start a business, just like you and your friend did."
Yeah.
What would you tell them today? They're early on aspiring entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
They got an idea. What would you tell them?
I think it's great, right? I think first of all, they're probably not going to understand the constraints that happen on later on in life, right? So whether it's marriage and kids and a mortgage and stuff like that. So there's a trade-off, right? The older you get, the wiser you get, but the more risk you take, personal risk you take, right?
Yes, yes.
So I think the 25-year-old entrepreneur is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity because you got nothing to lose,
Exactly.
And here's the other thing, if you smartly try to build a company and if you fail, like nobody's going to hold it against you. It's a great and noble mission. And I think a lot of companies understand that. But I would say this, I was looking at your notes before, Steve. I had, one thing I wrote down is, don't be an entrepreneur to be an entrepreneur. In other words, it might sound cool, you might want to do something by yourself, but, really be an entrepreneur if you really believe in your idea and because you're going to be, I have it written on my whiteboard back there. It's a 5-year journey minimum if you do it right. So you're not, the whole kind of, hey, let's flip it in a year or two, that great for the 1% of the people that do that, but you have to be able to have sustained, resilient commitment to building something. Number two is you have to, you asked me this question before, which is how does your market of, how does your sort of product evolve? But you have to have a core belief that the market will buy with whatever you're selling, right? And you have to test that. So you could have all this like really cool idea to, do what Elon Musk is doing and sort of plant, chips into pigs and whatnot. But like, he can afford to do that. The rest of us can, you actually have to think about, is this an opportunity that ultimately somebody will pay me money? Because you talked about raising capital from people. The other challenge is actually getting people to pay you for your service,
right? Yeah.
They might tell you it's a great idea, but it ain't a great idea until somebody pays you for your service.
That's right. And by the way, for all of you listeners out there thinking about starting a service business of any kind, I'll just tell you right now, nobody pays on time.
There you go. Exactly.
So when you're planning your cash flow, no, you're right. I bet it felt good though. The first client you signed, the very first check that hit the bank, that felt good though, didn't it?
Oh, it's the best. It's the best. I mean, you're literally like, now you have like the Chase app. You're taking pictures of the check. Like as soon as I open that check,
We,
boom, it's in.
we did that. We did that. Scott and I, my partner, we're at the bank. Like we're holding the check.
Yeah.
Picture.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
How about this? The last question. If you had to put you have two kids now?
Two kids.
Okay. All right. How old are they?
9 and 6.
9 and 6. I mean, hell, you're busy with that, much less running a business. Holy cow.
Yeah, I know.
If you had to put your wife and children, let's set them aside for a minute and assume they're the number one priority and core purpose in your life. So setting that aside, if you didn't tie your immediate family into it, what is your core purpose in life right now? How would you put that into a sentence?
Well, do you mean like for the business or for me personally?
I think the better way for me to ask that is, what is your professional core purpose?
Okay.
And you don't have to have an answer, by the way. You don't have to have an answer. I'm just curious what your thoughts are for that question.
No, look, I mean, our mission at Summus is two-sided, right? Number one is we want to be a powerful tool for people in their healthcare journey. And, I've experienced my father passed from cancer. My mother is a breast cancer survivor, tremendously strong woman. It's really challenging when people are dealing with health issues, whether it's a back issue that you're dealing with, what do I do? To be a source of support, of security, of peace of mind and empowerment is really important to me. And then I think on the physician side, when in the days of my grandfather, physicians were revered, right? They were truly like, well, wow, this person's a physician. They're smart. They're able to help us with our health. I think to some extent, the healthcare system, just by the way that the systematic sort of processes, the physician burnout is at 46%, right? And so, wow. It's just really unfortunate that people are dedicating 20, 30 years of their life to medicine. It's a really hard road. I couldn't do it. I started it at Duke and I just couldn't, it was just too much work. And you have to love it, and these folks love it. And so I think our other mission is to really, change the marketplace for expertise for physicians, because they are truly the core of the healthcare system. They're the people who are helping people make decisions, operating on people. Again, back to our mission of kind of improving the provider experience, we think we improve the consumer experience. So, that's really our philosophy and my professional mission. I enjoy what I do every day. I enjoy the business model. I enjoy, the challenges, the ups and downs, but those two things really drive me. And it's kind of the North Star, if you will, of our company.
I just think about your product, and I mean, if I can talk to a doctor without leaving my living room, and he's on the phone and he's spending 30 minutes with me, and he's like, hey, listen, I got all your stuff here. I'm looking at your x-rays. I saw the other notes from Dr. John and Dr. Bob, and here's what I think we should do next. I mean, that just the sound of that sounds awesome. We need to put Summus into Riderflex as soon as we're
there you go. There you go.
Congratulations on everything you've built so far. Really.
Thank you. You too. Yeah.
Congrats. Congrats. It's a special thing to build a company that also helps people and makes the world a healthier, better place, right? You're not just you're not just a capitalist, right? You're also helping people. I think that's an awesome thing. So
that's right. Yeah.
If you think today's tip or guest interview can help someone please share this with them. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to hit that little bell next to the subscribe button so you can be notified when we release a new episode. Our show features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. You can visit riderflex.com to learn more about us and get information on the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.